And now, we proudly present Invent America from the #1 home improvement radio program in the country, Home Talk USA, with your host, the Cajun contractor, Michael King, and his co-host, the Inventor Lady, Rita Crompton.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for Invent America, because America invents. And we want to dedicate this show, along with the other two segments of Home Talk USA, to America and to the fact that God saved former President Trump from being assassinated. And we are very grateful. We promote voting. And that is where we go and talk about how we feel is with our vote. It is not with a gun. It is not with violence. It is done civilly and through the right steps. So we are dedicating this show to elections and doing it the right way in America. And today we are talking about the startup and kind of that misnomer that people get going that, you know, I want to be a startup, but what does that really mean? In our mind, a startup is somebody that says, oh, I've got an idea, I'm going to get it manufactured and I'm going to start selling it. But when you start listening to some of these folks, that startup means, you're going to take somebody else's money and you might be successful, but the better chances are you are going to lose all that money. So my guest today, my industry expert, is Mr. Ray Burrasca. He has been working in this area for multiple decades. That whole idea of startup. So Ray, tell our listeners, back in the old days, what was startup, and it kind of transitioned a little bit. So let everybody know.
Okay, so historically, startups are someone starting a new business. Most businesses before the 1980s were self-funded. Some of them got money from the government through SBA grants. Some of them were lucky enough to get grants under other programs. But for the most part, before the 1980s, virtually every business was self-funded and organically grown. And then what happened was there was a company whose stock took off in an IPO, Apple Computer, and that changed history. After Apple was successful, the notion was that anybody could invent something in their garage. They could go to venture capitalists, or what we call accredited investors, angels, if you will, and that somehow magically those people would open their wallets and just pour money on the entrepreneur, on the inventor, and then the inventor would ride that trail of money right to the top and retire and drink little umbrella drinks in Tahiti.
Yeah, we always talk about you buy an island in Tahiti, and the reality check is maybe you get to keep your house. So that's where we want to push for, is inventors being able to get a product out there. And, when I'm working with an inventor, I look at two different types of inventors. One, they want to tee up the product, get it ready to go. Sometimes they do a short run, and then they want to be able to license their patent. And then the other group is they build organically, like you had said, is that, they're taking the money out of their savings. They keep their day job. I have several that keep their day job just to fund the inventing process. But they don't want to take somebody else's money. They don't want that obligation. And for the people who chase it, all right, whether it's, the angels, we call them vultures, or, the fantasy being on that TV show that's out there that everybody's heard about. It's like, oh, I want to grow up and be on this show. And so, those are, when they're looking at only that, rarely do they get their product to market.
Yeah, and the people that run that show, they know that what it really is more than anything else is entertainment. They're interested in driving ratings. What people don't realize is the filtering process that goes on before anybody can get on the show. And just like raising venture capital, it's incredibly hard to do that. And so very, 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 very few people end up on that show. That's the first thing. Just like venture capital. Venture capital is absurdly hard to secure. Less than 0.5% of all businesses that seek venture capital actually end up getting it. Okay? That's a huge failure rate. The second thing is that venture capital is greedy. They want, on average, 20 or 25% return year in, year out on their money. So it's extremely expensive money in that sense. And third, more often than not, the entrepreneur loses control of the business at some point in the business's evolution. So if you feel yourself to be an entrepreneur and you are an inventor, be really, really careful, because very, very few of those types of people ultimately succeed.
Well, we used to joke that, if you took somebody else's money, you were lucky if you got to ride in the trunk, because they did take over control. And if you stay in control, frequently, the only time you're going to the bank is to take money out. And rarely do you get to the point where you're actually putting money in. We had an inventor a few months ago that said, oh, they took, she took a bunch of money from an investor and then found out that investor actually expected her to do an equal raise, dollar for dollar, from friends and family. Well, that was not going to happen, but she'd already signed the paperwork, didn't read the fine print. So there can be some really difficult details that come down to taking somebody else's money. And it's too often that when they start chasing the money, they're not developing the product anymore.
Unfortunately, one of the avenues that people held some hope out for in the early 2000s was a thing called crowdfunding. But over time, what has happened is crowdfunding has mimicked more and more the same model that venture capital uses. So this whole concept of a co-investor being the entrepreneur or the inventor's family, that has become more and more common. And a lot of people that start crowdfunding campaigns in the hope of avoiding venture capital end up discovering halfway through the process that the crowdfunding platform is insisting that they put a lot of their own money, or people that they're close to put their money into the crowdfunding in order to succeed. So there really is no money out there that's easily available, that is not greedy, and that won't, in the end, cause you to lose control of your life and of your business, more importantly.
Well, and, we've seen a lot of products get out there. And certainly almost everything that you buy on a store shelf was invented by someone or a company. It had to start somewhere. Some of the interesting ones were, and the simple ones, the person that invented that little plastic disc that for the longest time would go in those pizza boxes, that was his product. And he made a business out of it, selling them all over the world. And his granddaughter eventually took over the company, organically grown, stayed in the family, and we've seen a lot of really successful products get out the door that were organic, as opposed to, taking investors. And so when inventors start chasing the money, as opposed to focusing on what's right there in their dining room table and in their pocket, that's frequently when they get off track, because they're chasing the wrong thing.
Right. And that is the key. It's not just a question of losing your house, but it's also a question of losing time, which is the most valuable commodity when it comes to being an inventor and trying to commercialize your product.
Yeah, we always say, you can make more money, but you cannot make more time.
Exactly.
And in the time that you're, you get out there, you start talking a little bit about the product, the patent is published at 18 months. So anybody out there digging around, in that realm of, published intellectual property, they are going to, be able to find what you've done. And if you're not in the marketplace now, yeah, they might be infringing, but it's not until the patent issues and you've gone down that road that you can actually go after them. If you're still in pending mode and you give up, they beat you to marketplace. So time is so important when you're getting out there. And, we always advise people, it's like, I know life gets in the way, but, time and chasing the money is a big one. When somebody says, oh, I'm out of money, I need an investor, it's like, I don't really know what to tell you. You've got a problem.
And also what's kind of sad is there's at least one national organization out there that supposedly represents the interest of the independent inventor. And that organization has started to push people toward TV programs where supposed venture capitalists are doling out money, when in fact, that's probably the worst thing they can do with serial inventors. And that is to try to push them into a kind of startup mode where venture capital becomes the raison d'etre for existing.
Yeah. And, always, tell inventors, look at the overall picture and, ask yourself, is this where you want to go? Being startup mode is tough. And most inventors have got, a skill set. All right. And so what we're looking at now is what is that skill set? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go through the next couple of guests. And when we have you on to wrap up, we're going to talk about, inventors and how do you decide the best way to go for your next steps and your path. So everyone stick with us. We've got a couple of inventors coming on, cool products, and Ray will be back with us to tie up the end of the show and give you some really good advice. So we're going to run off and pay some bills and thank our sponsors. Kicker Design is one that we want to thank very much, and also Packwell, that is made in America packaging. If you would like to know who those service providers are, get in touch. Hello, America, and thank you for joining us for this segment of Invent America. We are so glad to have all of you listening. And as we walk through the inventing process over our different segments, we are happy to have any of you who want to be on the radio. If you are an inventor or an inventor, have them fill out the form. It drops right into my email box, and I will give them a call and get them on the radio. It's free for all of our inventors, and it gives them a chance to talk about their product. So my next guest is Andy Scherer, and Andy is the inventor of the peanut butter pump. So Andy, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and then tell us about the cool product.
My name's Andy, and I've been a financial services professional for many years. And I always had the idea of coming out with inventions when I retired. I got laid off, so got an early retirement, and there decided that now was the time, and I went ahead with a few of my inventions. And the one that really got a lot of response from the public was the peanut butter pump. And this stems from the fact that as a single dad for many years, I made a lot of peanut butter sandwiches, and I always knew in the back of my mind that there was a better way to do it, instead of scraping the jar and opening it up and washing it all off later. And so I got to work on it, and I came up with a dispenser pump for peanut butter. It's a pretty simple concept. It's, no fuss, no muss, makes it quicker, faster, easier. And, most of all, it's fun. And after having fun with it, I went ahead and concentrated on some of the selling points, for self-serve buffets, college cafeterias. It's really a labor saver. And for households, especially busy households, if you use peanut butter a lot, then it's a useful, fun device, and, no more scraping the jar. It's fun.
Well, that's very
tasty.
cool. I'm not a big peanut butter eater, but we buy it every single week because my husband is.
Okay.
So I do understand that scraping the jar thing. So, today our topic is the money, that startup mode, how expensive it is and how challenging it can be for an inventor, and sometimes a surprise at how expensive it can be. How did you fund the steps?
Well, that's a very apropos question for me, because my product is not fully out. It still requires funding. But I have gone through a number of steps. I self-funded the early prototypes just from savings. And it was a lot more expensive than I imagined. I'm sure by talking to many inventors, that any invention, no matter what it is new. That's why it's an invention. And whenever you do something new, even if you just have a piece of wood, it's going to be in a different shape. There's going to be something different about it, which means it's not off the shelf. It's not standard. And so you need custom work, and it needs to be well done. And so I found myself requiring custom parts made out of silicone rubber and shapes made out of plastic and metal that had never been made before, or they'd been made, but not for this purpose. So they needed to be customized. And all of these parts are just, more expensive than you think they ought to be. And my first prototype probably cost $1,000 with, ordering 3D printing and doing a little machining and things like that. So, self-funding, and that's after many, many iterations. I did a lot of them that were cheaper. You try and fail with the cheap ones, and then you go to a more expensive one and you find out other problems, and then you keep going until you eliminate them all. But they're all quite expensive.
Well, and I think that where the technology has helped is in the rapid prototyping. It is actually a lot less expensive now to do a prototype with rapid prototyping, because you can print something out and you say, okay, this is the wrong size. It's too thick. It's too narrow. It's not strong enough, whatever, and go back and do another one. Whereas before you had to do a mold. So it was tough back in the day. What you cost, $500, $1,000 now was $10,000 20 years ago. So things have improved for the inventors a lot. I know that going out the door, inventors still will get sticker shock when they're doing prototypes, but holy cow, if you were doing it, 20 years ago, it is better. But it is still, it's still challenging. And when you start looking and say, all right, what can I do as far as getting the product into the marketplace? And you have to look at, the short run. We have inventors, what we call a short run, where they can get it out there, prove there's a marketplace for it, and then we can go after licensing. But not everybody can even do that. There are times when, we know going down the road, licensing is the only option, and proof of concept prototype is the target.
Yeah. So my next step was getting a TV ready. I got onto Shark Tank. It cost me another $8,000 or $10,000 just to develop a better prototype for that. It was TV ready. And then I went ahead and did crowdfunding, which, that's where I demonstrated a market and got a feel. And I got about $150,000 that way. And that helped a great deal, but it's still not enough to manufacture. And so right now I'm looking for funding for the actual manufacturing of it. And that's where I'm getting traction issues.
Yes. And, when we talk about, we've had a show about crowdfunding, and it's like, if you take any money, you are obligated to fill those orders. And that's a tough one, or otherwise you've got to give all the money back. And so people make a lot of mistakes. We've had, guys that earn $500,000 on a crowdfunding campaign, but they don't have the numbers settled as far as the manufacturing. And they lost everything because they couldn't fill their orders. And so understanding the rules of whatever platform you're getting into is really, really important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so
it's a tough issue, and I'm working on that with my backers. I'm fortunate that the peanut butter crowd is very understanding, very forgiving.
Well, that's a good thing that they are very understanding. So I was going to say, what's next for you on getting your product out there?
What's next for me is finding a larger investor to go ahead with the actual manufacturing and distribution.
So, well, we want to wish you the best of luck with that. And we want to thank our sponsor, Product Quick Start with Noah McNeely. He sent me someone who's going to be on the show in the next couple of weeks. So we're excited to have Noah's client on the show. And we will be right back with another inventor who is going to talk about the products that they have in the marketplace, he and his partner, and how cool those products are and where you can go to get them. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
And now, back to Invent America from the #1 home improvement radio program in the country. Home Talk USA with your host, the Cajun contractor Michael King, and his co-host, the Inventor Lady, Rita Crompton.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for being with us with this segment of Invent America. And we are part of the Home Talk USA family. If you are out there and you're an inventor, you've got some questions, you can find us at the Inventors Roundtable inventorsroundtable.org, and you can log in and join us for one of our meetings. Our schedule's posted. And if you are an inventor and you'd like to be on the show, or if you've got questions and you need a good vetted service provider, shoot me an email, send me a text message. My phone number is everywhere. My next guest is Duane Genzlinger. I have known Duane for many, many years. They've got a couple products in the marketplace, and he and his partner, Jerry, Hammerskill Homes is the name of their company, and they do remodeling, construction, a whole bunch of different things. And that's why the products that they have are so cool, because they needed them, they made them, they use them. And hammerskillhomes.com is the website. So we've got the box slider and the snapper, Duane. Tell our inventors what your products are and our listeners.
Well, the snapper is a one-person snap box. You don't need that person to come across and help you snap the line. It's got its own trigger on it. So, it's made to within 4 or 5 feet. It's got 20 foot of line on it. But, you can snap it with your thumb, and it's just, it's a spring system that works real well. And then the box slider is a electrical device that moves the electrical switch or outlet over, when you don't have to cut the casings, because a lot of times we're using wider casings, and you have to trim the plates, and that just looks bad. So we decided we come up with a piece of material that goes inside the box that slides everything over, so you don't have it's still within the box, so it's all legal, and you don't have to cut the plate. So those are the two. Now we got a couple more that we're working on. So
well, and you guys, I've known you've gone to some of the trade shows with us for over the last few years. You and Jerry have a construction business, building business together. And so you are earning and funding through the business. How has that worked for you guys? You haven't taken on any investors. You've been your own two investors.
We've been our own investor. It's just like taking on another partner. So we've tried not to do that. It probably would have been quicker if we had, but we're working it through. We've got the patents on both products, so that's a big help. But that it is expensive. I mean, I don't know. It's hard, but just you stick it out. I mean, that's sometimes you have to do that. So
well, there is nothing that gets you more excited than when you see that somebody you don't know is actually purchasing your product and using your product. That is so cool, and it's such a wonderful experience. And so you guys, and I know I get conference calls and I get, emails and text messages all the time from people says, that person you had on the radio, where do I get his product? And so I'll shoot over the website, and it's always fun to know that, America is out there listening and they want cool new products. And especially, when those products are going to be able to make a task for them easier and more efficient. And, I've seen somebody that says, come here over here and hold this thing so I can snap the chalk line.
Exactly.
So, the snapper makes a big difference. And I've seen crummy cuts on different electrical boxes. So your products are excellent.
Well, they've worked well, and we've even used them in new homes, new construction versus, it's good for the remodel, but a lot of times, they'll put another tube before and put the receptacle out that far. But then last house, we had 4.5-inch side trim. So there we're right back to where we were again. So we had to use the box slider to get it over further.
There you go.
It works real well.
It does. It does. I've seen your displays and seen your products. So, knowing what you know now, all right, what advice do you have for other inventors out there?
That's a good question.
I try not to do bad questions.
No, I know. You got an idea, go for it. I mean, it may be expensive, but if you have to go with your gut, and and just feel it out. You do your search, and your patent search is the big thing if it's out there already. But there's you just have to feel the market and see what's available. And
yeah, I had a gentleman in the Denver metro area who had a search done and came back and he goes, it was the one of the patents that you found was exactly what I was doing, right down to the measurements. It was exactly what I was doing. And he goes, it was like they were reading my mind, but their patent is already issued. So even though he was, he goes, it's really frustrating to know it's already out there. And, but thank you. Because you stopped me from spending a lot of money that would have ended up nowhere anyway, because eventually it would have come to light. And he was absolutely amazed that the search showed this product that was exactly like his.
Then he'd have gotten sued.
Well, most likely his patent wouldn't have issued.
That's true. Yeah.
Shoot, if the searcher can find it, the examiner should be able to find it. But in the meantime, they've spent a ton of money. So, the other thing that we always tell inventors is like, you kind of budget things out and plan your calendar and then double it, because it's going to cost twice as much and take twice as long.
Oh, exactly. And, it's the patents are very expensive. They shouldn't be, but, but everybody's got to get their cut.
But when we go from, the patent stuff, all right, getting the patent filed and having all the documentation, the drawings and everything. Then we go to sexy prototypes, marketing the product and letting people know what you've got. That can cost as much or more than all of the other steps put together.
Well, that's really hard, is getting your product on the market. And, that's what we're up against. I mean, we've got it in a few electrical stores, but everybody says, yeah, we like it. That's great. We've used it. But then you don't hear from them anymore. So, you got to keep pushing your product out there and getting it in front of people. So whatever it is, it's it's a big deal. It's hard to get it on the market.
It is. And that is such a challenge for the inventors is, they'll have some inventory. They'll get out there and try to start marketing, but it's like, any other story. It's not that you can build it and they will come. They don't know to come and find it because they don't know you're there.
Yeah. And as far as inventory, how much inventory do you need? Do you go out and you have 1,000 pieces or 10,000 pieces? That could be a lot of money too. So you kind of got to work into it slowly.
Well, you do. And a lot of times, there's price points. And I don't think that inventors really understand all of that. So you could have 1,000 made and, shipped and ready to go, but you find that a price point for 2,000 isn't much more, but they think that it's going to be double. So there's triggers at different numbers, and you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of those so that you really understand. So asking the questions, as you're going through it is a really good idea. And certainly understanding the different steps. We get inventors all the time that they'll call me and all of a sudden they say, well, I'm out of money. What next? And it's like, I don't have an answer for you, because inventing, it takes money to get the product out there. It takes money to tell people that you've solved a problem they may not have known that they had, or that there's a new product to solve, a problem, and they just don't know what to look for. That's where we've done the show about the name. How do you name your product? And so it's really important that you use a name that people would look for. And so when you're doing that, you got a better shot at it if they, know what to go and look for. So everyone, thanks so much for being with us for this segment of Invent America. And hang on, we will be right back and wrap up the show with our industry expert. Hello, everyone in America. Thank you for being with us. We are wrapping up this segment of The Money's Hard. Where do you go? Startups, being a startup is not necessarily a good thing. Being an inventor can be really exciting, but it can be really expensive. So my industry expert today is Ray Burrasca. Ray, now that you've heard the conversations with our two inventors, there was, quite an array of experiences there. Andy had gone after an investor. He had done some crowdfunding. Duane and his partner were just, by the seat of your pants, pulling it together. What advice do you have for an inventor on if you can do it this way, how should they be doing it? And what should they really try to stay away from?
Okay, I think your last guest kind of highlighted the difficulty of even growing a business organically. And that is that the intellectual property, getting the patents, that is the least expensive aspect of growing your business. So if they're upset about that cost, and they really don't have one of those slam bang trendy products that venture capitalists will jump on, the best course of action for them is to try to license their product to a company that's already in the industry, that knows the kind of product that we're talking about, and that can have the muscle to drive that product to the marketplace in a way that an entrepreneur or single inventor is incapable of doing. Let me just share with you two quick stories. Two of my best clients, my absolute best clients, sensational entrepreneurs. One had 5 businesses that he sold successfully and ended up on a TV show with a bunch of venture capitalists, took the money, and ultimately, in spite of all of his prior experience and intelligence capability, ended up with his company in bankruptcy. That was the only company that he ever ran that ended up that way. Every single other company was successful. The second inventor was a fellow that actually managed to acquire venture capital. But the problem there is the venture capitalists didn't see the company growing as fast as they wanted it to grow. It was still growing. It would have grown organically, wonderfully. But the venture capitalists, in their greed, decided they didn't want to wait around. And so they forced them to sell the company prematurely. So you have two people, talented entrepreneurs, talented inventors, who ended up in the arms of outside investors. And both of them had very, very bad experiences. So when you put it all together, it seems to me, especially when you factor in your last guest, when you put it all together, the smartest thing an inventor can do is to try to find a marketing partner, which means licensing their intellectual property to someone who knows what they're doing, who's already been there, done that, and can help them drive their product to make it a success and to send them some money instead of draining their coffers and ending up destitute.
Well, and a lot of inventors don't realize that those big box stores are consignment shops. They don't buy anything and they don't make anything. They might put a label on it that it looks like they're making it, but they're not really making it. And, they know the game, and they might sell 50,000 units for you and end up sending you an invoice instead of a check because your, barcode was in the wrong spot. So they know the game. They know how to take advantage of the inventor. So when you license it to a supplier to one of the big box stores, they know they probably already own all the shelf space for that line of product. And so when you go with those guys, you actually will grow bigger faster because they know how to deal with it in the marketplace. And, trying to go it alone is tough because it's hard to get in front of the eyes that are actually going to pick the product up and pay for it.
No, absolutely.
So what we look at then is, being able to share with all of America the very cool products that our inventors have and let you know, all right, where to go and find them. So all of the inventors who are on Invent America are listed on our website, invent-america.com. Also, you can Google Inventor Lady because all the products are listed there as well. So if you want to help the American inventor who is helping the American economy, all right, go to the website, look for those products that are interesting to you. I get calls, the Blue Viper trenching shovel all the time. And he is sold in one store, and that one store in America will ship it out anywhere in the lower 48s to get them to you. So, you want to be there, do that, help out, go and find the products that you are going to enjoy. And by the way, it's summertime. So, get out there and buy some bunch of balloons, because that American inventor is an American hero and fights for the rights of intellectual property and people filing patents all the time. Ray, do you have it now that, I was able to give the cheerleading for America Invents and the American inventor and helping the economy? Yay. Do you have any last minute advice for our listeners who are, everybody's on a budget. So how do they manage their budget?
The first thing they should do is they should tune into your program every week religiously, because the kind of wisdom you dispense there is hard to find.
Well, that is, we appreciate the advice and the vote of confidence. And we are going to be coming on with our third hour today, which is talking about those products that are made in America and the process of manufacturing in the U.S. We love to have made in the U.S. products, but not all products. Yeah, it's tough. It's a challenge. But that is, I don't know a single inventor that has the option to manufacture in America first and says, oh no, I think I'll go overseas. It'll be more fun. Everybody wants to be able to have made in the USA on their packaging. And so we are really glad that Greg Owens will be coming up, and he will be talking about the process of manufacturing in America and some of those things, those products that are made in America. So if you have got a product and you are saying, all right, where am I going to have this made? Greg is your guy to go to and find out what are the options. If you are an inventor and you have questions, you need some help, you can go to the inventorlady.com, download the Inventor's Galaxy Guide. That is going to walk you through the steps. So be with us next week when we will have a whole new lineup. And in the meantime, enjoy the weekend and be safe out there.